There are lots of watch brands that I overlook or I don't pay enough attention to or that I don't even know exist, and I thought it would be a great idea to create some videos about some of these brands and dive into them a little bit. Not specifically about the brand themselves, but more about the watches that stand out from that brand. So today is going to be my first in a series of videos doing this sort of dive into watches from brands that perhaps you haven't given enough attention to. And today I thought it'd be fantastic to start with a brand that has certainly come to my attention and has certainly stood out to me, and find 10 watches from Montblanc. Hello, you're watching James. My name's James, you're watching me, and I am talking about watches. And when I was thinking about putting together this video and this series of videos that I will be releasing in this sort of format, I did start to think, well, I should dive into the brand a little bit first, talk about the history of the brand, perhaps the innovations and the designs. But as much as I like looking and learning and watching videos about those sorts of things, I've realized that I'm not very good at doing it, or at least I don't enjoy the process of making that style of video. So instead, what I like to do, and what I think I'm better at doing, is finding some awesome watches from brands and bringing those watches to your attention. But I am probably going to do just a very quick summary of the brand, just to put it into context, because you may not actually know the brand well or know the history of it. So super quick summary. But then what's more important to me, and what I think is going to be better for this video, is me showing you these amazing watches. So Montblanc is obviously known very well for their fountain pens, and they started that business of fountain pens in 1906 in Germany. And their most famous pen is the Meisterstück. Apologies if that's not pronounced correctly, but Meisterstück in German means masterpiece. Then later on in 1935, they went into the leather goods production, and this is relevant today for this video because today, with the watches that I'm going to show you, any of the leather straps that they come on are produced by their leather side of the company. But then later, Montblanc became part of the Dunhill Group in 1985. A short time later, in the 1990s or late 1990s, 1998, there was ended up bought out by the Richemont Group. But just before that happened, in 1997, they revealed their first watches that they intended to put forward. They decided to create a sub-brand within the Montblanc group and create real watches. And they started with the collection called Meisterstück to link in with those pens and link in with the idea of masterpieces. And I don't think it was deliberate, but when they started this watch business, they went out looking for a facility to start building the watches, and they ended up choosing an old villa in Le Loch, which was actually built in 1906, which was the founding year of Montblanc themselves. But then later in 2006, the Richemont Group then purchased the Minerva Movement Company, and they used that Minerva Company to integrate into Montblanc. So Montblanc watches now have Minerva, the watch movement company, integrated into their facility. And as I look at the watches that they currently produce and as that they've produced in the past, in my mind I sort of categorize them into two separate entities, in part because some of their watches are using these high-end sort of Minerva movements, and I categorize them as their sort of high horology pieces, or at least they're more expensive pieces. But then they have another subgroup of watches, and although they're not doing it themselves, this is how I group them, is in a more affordable range, more in the Oris kind of price ranges, and where they're using movements from Sellita. So they have these sort of Sellita powered watches and then these Minerva powered watches. But what I really want to share with you today is 10 of their watches that I've found online that I think look absolutely fantastic. And strangely enough, none of them are their current catalogue watches. Some of their current catalogue watches are nice, but they're not the ones that I want to share with you. So let's flip over to my desk, where it's going to be easier for me to share with you these 10 Montblanc watches. So I found these 10 watches on Chrono24. I like using this website when searching for watches. There tend to be a lot on there, lots of varieties, lots of used models and new models, and it just tends to be a good website for me to go searching. Has some great filter options too, which makes it really easy to use. But if you are going to be searching for one of these yourself, make sure when you actually then go to buy one, you look beyond Chrono24, because you want to find the right right watch at the right price. And speaking of prices, I'm going to be listing them in Australian dollars, and I'm not doing any conversions today because I'm not specifically trying to show you prices of watches. It's more about drawing your attention to some pretty cool watches. And the watches I am going to show you today are specific versions of them. A lot of the ones that I'm going to show you also have other versions, different dial colors or possibly different sort of complications, but I'm just going to show you the ones that stand out to me. So if you like one in particular, have a look at the varieties of them that are available. But let's jump into the first one that I've found. This is actually one that has really stood out to me, and I'm seriously considering it myself. It is the Montblanc Reveal. Now, you'll see the extra hand there. This is not a GMT. This is a mechanical alarm. Hence why it has the dual crown. One is for activating the alarm, and one is for obviously just the normal general workings of those three hands. But it has a nice sort of window there for the day of the week and the date. So it has a nice symmetry to it. Plus it's kind of cool having the extra hand on the dial there. And a mechanical alarm is something a little bit cool too. But let's see what listings there are available for this one. I think there's only one on here at the moment. When you do go searching for watches, especially on Chrono24, I do find that sometimes you have to search beyond the normal criteria because they sort of tend to list them in different locations as well. Check out the movement of that. It's got all the little Montblanc logos there in that rotor there. Movement looks lovely, lots of little decorations. This guy doesn't have the best photos, but just using it as an example, Montblanc leather strap there, so it would have been made by Montblanc too. One thing I have found about this sort of generation of Montblanc watches, they like to inscribe the side of the case. And in here, a number between the two crowns isn't too bad, but this miser struck. They seem to do that on quite a few of their watches, and I don't really like that. Seemed to be a thing at that time. But realistically, you're looking down at the watch, so it's not too bad. I do like that these numbers here appear to be either applied, or if they're molded in, they have like a silver on top. Really quite cool. I like this one. I think it's a 38mm case as well. So just look at a couple of the specs of this one. Yeah, 38mm case from around 2010. Reference number 7026. The next is a relatively new model, but I don't think it's a current model. This is the 1858 mono pusher chronograph. All the watches I'm showing you today are mechanical because that does tend to be what I like, but I just like the general look of this one. I like the dual colors. The dual timers there, and this one has a running second hand. That's a running second hand. This is your counter, and that's your chronograph hand, and it's a mono pusher in there into the crown itself. Let's have a quick look at some of the specs. It's got a 48-hour power reserve, sapphire crystal, 42mm, and it's on this beads of rice bracelet. I really like the look of this one. Let's see if there's any listings of this one out there. Oh, yeah, there's quite a few. Let's just pick one. Let's just pick this one here. Just looking for some more sort of photos of it, really. Lovely looking case. I have looked at quite a bunch of reviews of this one because I have seriously considered buying this one for myself. And it does look good. Apparently it is relatively big. I think it is around about the 50mm or even just over lug to lug. So it's large, but I don't mind. I think that looks quite good. And look how nice that beads of rice is. Very cool sort of mountaineering case back there. Has this sort of butterfly clasp, which I'm assuming it's going to have a little bit of heft to it, a little bit of weight. So maybe that would be quite interesting. It would be interesting to see how it then sat on wrist. But I just love this combination. I love that it's a mono pusher as well. And I like that there's going to be some movement on the dial. And I'll mention that later. I'm mentioning that for a specific reason because a couple of the watches from Montblanc I've noticed don't have movement on the dial, no running seconds, and it takes away from it a little bit for me. Now, this one I think looks absolutely cool as a little dress watch. And I say little because, let's scroll down, it is a 36mm. I'm starting to like the smaller watches, and I think if it's the right watch, then that size is going to be perfectly fine. But what I like about this one is it has a little bit of extra on the dial, running sub-second hand and a power reserve. And these numbers seem to be applied as well. And I'm pretty sure there's a couple of variations of this one. There's one on the bracelet. Let's check out the one on the bracelet. Yeah, see, they look molded, but they're probably going to have like a satin sort of metal polish sort of finish to it. I think it's a lovely looking watch, and on the bracelet especially will have a nice feel to it. The Montblancs tend to have this sort of enamel Montblanc symbol there on the dial, on the crown there, I'm sorry. But yeah, Montblanc, see that? Yeah, it seems to be a thing, and watches around this sort of time period as well seem to do this etching into the case, which is not my favorite. But what I do like is that at this sort of time period, there is this step down on the lugs there, which I think is quite nice. And a watch like this, I think it'd have quite a nice feel on wrist. Just wish it didn't have that miser struck there. I think it looks a little bit 90s, even though this is not a 90s watch. But I think it's just a cool looking watch. I do like the symmetry of it with the power reserve there coming down with that sub-second dial there. Very, very cool. Now the Time Walker series is not actually my favorite group of watches from them, but there is a lot of them. And if you happen to like this style, then you can probably get the best value from these sort of brand on these. They're 42 millimeters, obviously a mechanical movement, and there's a heap of variations. There's sub-second registry variations, there's UTC or GMT versions of it as well, straps and bracelets. Let's see what this one shows. Yeah, see there's a sub-second version of it, but there's also, yeah, I think I actually quite like the GMT version of this one, but I just wanted to show you the basic one. Let's click on that, because I think it's actually a nice looking watch, and I think it'd be a great everyday watch too. There is some lume in there, nice easy layout, got the date window there. Let's scroll through a little bit. Yeah, and when you're looking for these particular ones, these Time Walkers, you can probably get the best value. And look at the case. Do you see the partially skeletonized case? I think that's awesome. I wonder if there's a better picture of that. Yeah, there we go, look. Yeah, really cool. I like it, I just don't love it, but I think there's going to be plenty of people that do really like this look. And if you do, it's probably going to be the best one to go for, because just value for money from a good brand with a great mechanical movement. This one also might be one of the best value on this list, because this kind of chronograph layout with the numbers and the date there and the sub-registries, I've seen a lot of brands do something very similar. I think I've seen them from IWC, from Sin, from all sorts of brands. And this one, yeah, the price range is quite good. Let's have a quick look at the size of them. It's a 38 mil, so that's a lovely size. I like that size. I think it's very, very cool. Let's have a quick look at the listings that we've got, see if we can find something. Let's see how many pictures this guy's got going on. Yeah, some nice touches to it. It's really sort of well made, like the crown there. It's going to have that enamel Montblanc symbol there as well. It's got the little symbol in the counterbalance there, which is quite good. It's going to have a running second hand. I'm assuming that's a running second hand, chronograph hand, plus your sub-registers or the sub-registries that are going to be capturing that time with your chronograph feature. It's going to, of course, have some of those numbers put in there. Really nice bracelets. The bracelets are really good on these watches. But one thing it is worth noting, if you are looking at a second-hand watch, especially these, I've noticed on these Montblancs, is they don't always have all the links. So keep that in mind. But yep, nice mechanical movement. You can see there, butterfly clasp, just a good quality, very nice classically looking chronograph mechanical watch at a reasonable price. So sorry to interrupt. I know it is sometimes annoying when people jump in the middle of videos and ask you to subscribe, but that's exactly what I'm doing. So please, if you haven't done so already, could you please subscribe to the channel? Okay, let's get back to the video. Now this one I really like. I'm drawn to this style of watch. It's like a big sort of pilot or a sort of a vintage pilot with these cathedral hands and the sub-second down there at the 6. It's called the 1858. It is worth noting, however, it is a larger watch. It is a 44mm case. And I've noticed that with a lot of these styles of watches, and I think it's a lot to do with the movement that is used. Let's see if this one has a see-through case back. Let's go and have a quick look. Let's just pick one at random. I just think it's a lovely looking watch. I've seriously considered this one on multiple occasions before. Come on, turn it over. Turn it over for me. Come on, turn it over for me. I don't think he's going to, oh, there it is. Yeah, see that? It's a sort of a pocket watch ETA movement. You see these in quite a few different watches and sort of pilot watches, and it's a large movement. So you'll notice then the watches that it goes into are generally 43, 44, 45. So that's about standard for that movement inside of a watch. But it's a very good looking movement. There we go, much better. Very good looking movement. And I've seen these at reasonable prices. Like I almost bought one a while back, but I do have another watch in my collection that kind of fills that spot at the moment. And I don't like doubling up too much with certain styles. Let's go back to the basic. Yeah, just a good looking watch. Definitely if you can pull off this size, and I don't think it's a huge lug to lug, it's just a relatively big 44 across there. But with that movement at these sort of prices, I've seen it half that price. There's one that you're going to have to keep a lookout for if you want to actually buy one, but worth keeping an eye out if you like the design, the look, and the size. and with that movement, I think really good value plus just a great looking watch. Now this one I actually think is a current model watch which you can buy brand new still, and I think it's a lovely looking GMT, reasonably priced, obviously a Swiss made automatic movement in there, nice coloured sort of GMT hand there, which goes nicely with all these different textures and surfaces, running blue second hand. There is some lume in there, and I think this is actually a relatively nice size watch, yeah, 40mm, really good size. The only thing about this one that I'm not 100% convinced about, and I'll try and find one which shows some real photos of it. These dots, I don't know, do they look a little bit weird to you? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I would prefer them to be more like battens or something. Let's see if we can skip through some photos of this one. Well, this one seems to come with all of its bits and pieces. Well, no, I want something at an angle. Come on, show me an angle. Show me, oh, there's the case back at least. That is the factory that the Montblanc watches are made in Le Loc, I think Le Loche, or I'm not very good with my pronunciations, I do apologise. I want to show it at an angle. No, it's not going to show me at an angle. Either way, these are applied, both the numbers and the dots. I'm just not 100% convinced about the dots, but that aside, I love the blue around the outside, the little touches of red, nice size as well, and for a 40mm Swiss automatic GMT, the price range isn't too bad. Let's just go back quickly and look at the other listings, put it by low to high. Yeah, around the 2,000 Australian. You have to consider postage as well as any taxes as well, depending on where you get it from. But it's another one that if you like the size of it and like the look of it, oh, let's look at this, now you can see the size. There we go. See that they do stick up a little bit. Nice shape to the case. I think I've tried this one on and it was a really nice on-wrist experience. Did quite enjoy it, but worth keeping an eye out because you probably end up finding this one in the next few years at a really reasonable price online. Now this one I almost bought. I was so close because I found one for just over 1,000 Australian, which was a little bit bonkers how cheap it was. But I'm just not 100% convinced on the two-tone with the sort of brass silver and no running second hand. So that is a little issue for me, which is why even though it was a great price, I just couldn't do it. Plus it's another one with a big sort of diameter. It's a 44mm. So it's a little bit similar to the other one that I showed you, just doesn't have a second hand on there. Let's zoom in, sorry about that. But I'm not sure if I like the two-tone, or perhaps I do like the two-tone, I don't know. I think it's one of those ones which at the moment I don't really like, but I might sort of meld into, or I might sort of start to develop a like for it. Or maybe I found this one at such a good price that I just started to try and convince myself that I liked it. But nice sort of case back there, mechanical obviously. I think this one might be that hand wound movement too, because it's actually quite thin. It's just a different version compared to the one with the sub-second register. Now I do love a moon phase, and a moon phase with a pointer date with these nice numbers. Let's just go down because I want to show you the size of this one. I think this is a reasonable size here, 42, which is, it's bigger for this dressy style, but it means that you'll have quite a bit of presence on wrist, obviously mechanical. But the problem again with this, and I think there's been a few with Montblanc, let's have a look at this one. No running second hand. It just needs a running second hand, or at least I do. But what I do like is there's the Montblanc symbol, and you see how the waves come away from that? And the waves come away from that in that central section. That means the light would really play with it really nicely. Swiss made, obviously. Proper moon phase, I'm going to assume, with the pointer date. I think that's cool. No lume, however, so worth keeping that in mind. Let's have a look at a couple of pictures of this one. Pretty sure there's a few colors of this one as well. Yeah, that's a nice case shape. That enamel Montblanc symbol and the little pusher there to activate the moon phase, I assume. Yeah, and you can only sort of assume also that the leather straps with these ones are going to be good. Worth keeping in mind, however, there's the mechanical movement. I've noticed that quite a few watches, especially on Chrono 24, are sold via Japan, and you can get some of the best prices from second-hand watches from Japan. Yet some of their rules, or their export rules, don't allow for the leather straps to be sent out of the country if they're crocodile or something like that. So just keep that in mind. You may end up, depending on the country that you're living in, that you might end up with the watch and not the strap. They do mention that in their listings, however. And lastly, of course, it has to be the Nicolas Roussec Montblanc. And this is my watch, the one that I have on my wrist right now, the one that I was immediately drawn towards when I started this search for Montblanc watches, and it's the one that I'm so glad that I ended up purchasing. So I'm going to show you some stuff on this website, but also throw in a bit of footage from my own watch as well. It is a 43mm case, which does sound big, but I have a 17cm wrist and it suits me perfectly fine. It is worth noting with this watch, however, there are huge amounts of variations. This is one of the early variations, and it's the one that I like the most. So it's the one which is the one that I chose, obviously. But there are versions with like a jump hour look to it. Let's zoom in. There's ones with like a jump hour there. There's partially skeletonized there. There are different types of discs. When I do a full review of my Montblanc Nicholas Roussek, I'm going to dive a bit more into that and just try to show you all the different variations. Because I bought mine from or ex-Japan, I didn't get the strap, so I'm using a different strap on mine. You'll see that I'm using my Hamilton strap at the moment, but I've also got the bracelet on its way. There's just been a bit of a complication with that, which is why the review for this one's taking so long. Beautiful looking movement, but I've been really impressed by my watch that I own from Montblanc, which is why I've really started looking more and more at the other watches that they have available. And that mono pusher chronograph and that alarm watch, well, they're both on my list. I'm not sure if I'll end up ever getting them because I'm trying to be mindful about how much money I spend on watches, but I do like both of them as well. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, maybe you might enjoy watching these videos next.